All right, guys, thanks so much for listening to the CX Chronicles podcast. Super excited for today's show. Lisa VanderGast, welcome to CXE.
Thank you so much, Adrian. I'm really excited to be here and meet CX Nation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, guys, this is going to be a cool one today. Lisa runs an awesome team at a company called AdColony. Lisa, I'd love for you to start the show like we start all of them. Why don't you take a couple minutes to let the CX Nation know how you got into this whole wild world of customer service, customer management, customer success, and how you ended up at an awesome company like AdColony today.
Yeah, totally. I think like most of your guests, CX has always been interesting to me from the time I was young. Interacting with brands and just that experience has always intrigued me. I got into ad tech probably 12 years ago when the .com was kind of on a rocky slope, but I landed at a great company. I worked in campaign management, so really on the operations side, not too much interaction with clients. Over time there, I started getting introduced to clients, doing more of the account management and managing brands and agencies' advertising campaigns, and really was hooked, right? Over the years, I've learned that you don't have just one experience, you need multiple. After leaving this company that I was at, one of the questions that was burning in my mind is, why are clients asking for the things they're asking for? What is making them drive their campaigns in a certain direction or pick these publishers that they're running with? So I made the decision to actually go to the client and work on the client side. This really gave me a bird's eye 360 view of all of digital advertising, from the strategy planning, the hurdles that we're faced with as clients to get to our consumers with the right message. And so, getting that experience on the client side really, ingrained in me the need to give clients the most, rich experiences that they could have in any aspect that they're interacting with us. I've been at AdColony now for 3 years. And when I say enriched, AdColony is enriched, right? We are the largest mobile gaming in-app monetization platform and ad network. So all of our users are already engaged in the platform that they're on. So adding advertisers' experiences within there just gives it an added flavor, right? So really growing that and making sure that the messaging is right, that the ad units, the creative is enriched, so that it really, at the end, all the user has the experience that they're looking for, right? I think when you're playing a game in an app, you don't want anything that's too deterrent. AdColony is not one of those, right? So we reward people for actually interacting and engaging with our advertising, which I think sets us apart from a lot of other ad networks and monetization platforms.
That's awesome. That's super cool. Did you, I have to ask, did you ever think that, was this a space that you were already interested in earlier in your career? Was this the type of space that an opportunity presented itself and you jumped on it? How'd you kind of get into this whole world?
Yeah, I mean, when I went to college, we didn't even have ad tech, right? We didn't know about digital advertising. I majored in advertising. I understood magazine and television and radio, but digital advertising was never anything that my teachers taught me about because they didn't understand it. Mobile advertising specifically has only really boomed in the last 2 decades, right? And it continues to grow and continues to develop and change over time. So to answer your question, no, I did not think I would be in ad tech, but it's one place that I can't foresee myself being anywhere else. Like this is something that, again, like I said, is ever changing, ever evolving. Regulations, technology, everything is always developing. And it's a really exciting place to be and on the forefront. And like I said, I can't see myself anywhere else.
I have a lot of friends who work in ad tech, Lisa, and you're right. There's just cool things that happen in ad tech on a regular basis, whether or not it's like, as you just mentioned, a new piece of technology that gets everybody all cranked up and excited and they want to know more about it. They want to be involved. But the other piece to it too is just understanding users in this digital world where like our digital footprints are always changing. We're always
Yeah.
picking up new apps, we're picking up new tools, we're leaving different digital footprints, whether we realize it or not, guys, right? We're leaving them all over the place. And it's kind of cool to be a part of the space that tries to figure out, number one, how to understand what that all looks like,
Mhm.
how to help others monetize what that looks like and find tomorrow's customers, let's call it what it is. But
Yep.
just also just like it's a cool space where there's so many different companies that are doing incredible things to really push ad tech into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked on every digital platform. So from, CTV to desktop, mobile, video, it's been a learning curve everywhere. And even after you feel like you know everything, something's going to come up where it changes the spectrum and how you have to interact with your customers. And educate your customers. I think for us as an ad tech expert and a mobile in-app expert at AdColony, we're really looked at to educate our clients, right? It's not just about transactional stuff. It's all consultative, right? New things are changing right now with iOS, and they're opt-in with IDFA, and I feel like our clients don't know exactly what that means to how they are going to reach their consumers after this is all said and done, right? Because this is still new. So we are proactively educating them on how our strategies and their strategies are going to have to change in the future.
Yep. Yep. That's huge. I mean, it really is. Again, you're in a space where things do change so quickly that having a partner and having somebody that actually understands the lay of the land and understands what types of changes are coming, what types of just different obstacles or different challenges or different compliance measures that are going to enter into the day to day. It's really, really important.
Yeah, totally. I remember back in the day when Steve Jobs woke up in the morning and said, "Oh, we're done with Flash." Well,
Yes.
all kids at the time, that's all the education they were going when they were going into, creative design, they were learning Flash. So we had to readjust and retrain as we were out of college, and learn different formats to actually execute creative executions on platform. So that was years ago, and here we are again, another Apple change in the works, and
Oh
here we
yeah.
are, working through it again.
Yep. So Lisa, I'd love to jump into the first of the four CX pillars team. Why don't you spend a couple minutes telling the CX Nation about the team over at AdColony? Talk about your team, give us the lay of the land for the big picture side of the team, but we'd love to hear more about your client services team as well.
Yeah, so I head up the brand advertising client services team. We have different aspects of the AdColony. Our clients are not necessarily just brand advertisers. Obviously, we have our consumers, our end users. We've got our publishers, which are really important. I mean, that's our bread and butter. That's where, we are able to deliver all of these enriched ads for our brands and advertisers. And we've also got a performance arm. My team specifically works, like I said, with brand advertisers. They're comprised of about 12 client services managers across the US. We have a team of sellers, and we work very closely together. I think that's one of the key successes of AdColony and our client services and customer service is the fact that our sales team and our client services team are so intertwined, right?
Right. Yep.
There's not one step that one person is making without the other knowing. It's kind of sharing the same brain
Yeah.
when working
Yeah.
with our customers, which is so critical. I've worked at companies before where it's very delineated between the
Yep.
sales team and the customer service team, and it's kind of like a handoff.
Yeah.
I would say there's really no handoff here. It's kind of working in conjunction. It's a great team. My team, I think for them, getting to work on some of the coolest brands is really amazing. And one of the things, like I said before, is really not making it transactional. It's really growing the business and building relationships with these clients, just as our sales team would, and making it more consultative, right? Just because a client thinks they need to do X, Y, and Z, it might not be the best strategy for them. So
Yep.
what can
Yep.
we present that, makes them understand how mobile in-app gaming works and the user in order to change their strategy to fit, with what we're doing here.
I love that. There's a couple of points I want to hit on that you just excellent points here, Lisa. But the first one is just this idea of having your sales and your service, or your sales and your support, and your customer service just working hand in hand. So like, it's you and I both have then been at both companies where like you have the first one that we talked about where you're on the exact same page, expectations are being set collaboratively. You are essentially client services understanding exactly what the obstacles are from the get-go, so they're already kind of planning ahead and probably thinking about operational smoothing, or they're figuring out what they need to do with product to make sure that everything's great. And then there's the other path where you mentioned the word handoff, and I know that this is something that we do spend a lot of time talking about, handoffs and just the whole flow of a given customer journey at CXChronicles. And handoffs are tough because like, if you think about it, I know I use a lot of sports analogies in the show, but like handoffs, even the best, even Tom Brady fumbles handoffs, right? Even Tom Brady, it doesn't happen often, but like literally even the best in the world, that he fumbles them. And I think the other thing too is just that there's different conditions, just like in a football game. Maybe it's a rainy day, maybe it's a cold day, maybe it's like there's all these different variables that are out of our control that fumbles can happen. And handoffs are, some companies have proven like they've done excellent jobs of building perfect little handoff processes where everything is seamless and everything is connected and all of the boxes get checked to ensure a perfect handoff. But for startups and for companies that are growing super fast and companies that are seeing 100% growth year over year, and they're bringing on more customers than they even know what to do with, literally most times, there's a lot of fumbles, and it's very easy to fumble on the wrong play. Well, maybe you have a pivotal type of customer, a big, huge account, or a big, huge potential promoter who could really do like a lot of good for your business and your brand. And when you fumble on those plays, it's just a bummer. So I love the fact that you guys at AdColony are building on that first path. And I think it's interesting for the listeners to think about, kind of plotting what type of path you're on right now.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, I've been at companies where, you have your pre-sale, you have your post-sale. And I've been at companies where they've merged pre-sale and post-sale to kind of get into that, holistic team mentality, left brain, right brain. I think one of the struggles with doing that too, as great as it is to, hinder any fumbles, is making sure that people understand what their roles and responsibilities are, so that there's trust between the two teams. It's like a marriage. I've always said this, I use this analogy, actually, it's more like a mom and nanny type of situation. It's like, as a seller, you might be the mom of the account, but you need to trust your nanny that, they're going to supply the child with everything they need, feed them. It might not be the same outfit you would put them in, but they're still going to dress them appropriately for the weather, right? And yeah, and I think that, growing that trust is very hard to do. We're human, right? Trust isn't a given in life. And what I did at AdColony in the beginning was understanding that there was that little bit of a rift between who handles what and trust issues. I created just a simple SLA, right? A service level agreement between sales and client services, and what we're providing to each other in order to provide for our clients, right? The client being the end all goal. But I always see our, sales team as also our clients, and sales sees us as their clients, right? So we always want to make sure that we're aligned in what we're doing to support the business, to make it successful.
Yep, that's great. That's awesome. Lisa, I'd like to jump into the next pillar, and this is probably a big part of how you guys keep the trains on the track. Let's spend some time talking about tools. I'm super interested in understanding. Spend a couple of minutes talking about the toolkit that your client services team has had to put together at AdColony, and then just spend a couple of minutes talking about from your own personal CX'er journey. I'd love to just kind of pick your brain and hear some ideas or things that you've learned that have been very helpful, very useful, regardless of which tools you're using, but just from a basic like leadership tool management perspective.
Yeah. So, obviously, in ad tech and in sales, Salesforce is one of the biggest CRM tools that we use to manage incoming business. opportunities, lead gen, all of that. So really Salesforce is kind of our bread and butter into forecasting and really understanding the revenue growth and what's coming in.
Okay.
I think for my client services team, they use a plethora of tools, right? We are working with different types of operations teams. We're working with creative services. We're working with the trafficking team. We're working with the data team. All of those tools are separate, which I think is a little difficult at times to manage. They all have their ups and they all have their downs. I think there isn't one set tool for any one process. So it's really finding a balance between what works for the end receiver and what works for the client services team. So Basecamp is one of the big ones that we use in terms of processing, making sure that those handoffs, between our internal teams are buttoned up. I think it's a great tool. I mean, you can really use it to build timelines and everything like that. And I think that it's just one that we've kind of grown to accustomed to. In terms of my day-to-day, obviously I go back to Salesforce again. I'm in Salesforce probably 8 hours out of the day, on and off. Just understanding what my team's working on, the budgets that they're working on, the priorities that they're working on, and the timelines really helps me give my other operations team, and other internal teams insights into what's coming down the pipe so that they can prepare. We work with international teams. We have a team in Istanbul, which is amazing. They also have their own, holidays and things like that they need to take. So it's, again, understanding that and building the handoffs and timelines to work around that and work with them on those things. So I think that those are probably like the key tools that we use. I think for me, communication is the best tool ever, right?
Yeah. What do you guys do? Is there a tool that you use for communication? Is it primarily internally you're using emails, you're using Slack, you're using a messenger?
Slack. I mean, I live and breathe on Slack these days. I think that I grew up in an instant messenger world. And I think that Slack has really allowed us to connect even on a quick call, just jumping on a quick call with somebody on the other team that might not be understanding the request. I think Slack is definitely one of the things that we use the most in terms of communication. And then our best friend, Zoom, right? I mean, I'm on, I have literally invited.
You've been on a lot of Zoom calls lately, Lisa?
You think? I've
like
literally invited.
Last 13 months, we've all been on like a different level of Zoom connectivity.
Oh man, I mean, I've probably introduced everybody to this, my home, my chaos that happens here. And it is what it is. I mean, at the end of the day, AdColony has actually performed really, really well during the pandemic. I think as a business, mobile in-app gaming has increased dramatically, over the last 13 months. And, we've been able to connect with each other in a way that still keeps that culture, still keeps that morale, still keeps the focus on, success and execution. And we've really been able to, step above. And I think it's a new world, right? I don't think, in-person meetings are going to happen anytime soon. So how do we stay connected? And I think this is the way to do it. Good, bad, and ugly.
No, I love it. So first of all, thank you for sharing that. A couple quick thoughts on Slack. It's funny. So many of the guests on the show, Slack is almost a regular. Same with Salesforce. Salesforce is a regular. But what's interesting about Slack, I think, is it's funny how different businesses and different organizations use Slack. Number one, meaning like everyone kind of has their different, their unique usability flow for their specific business and team. But number two, I think the other part that I hear about all the time is just the different use cases internally and externally for Slack. So like some folks are coming on the show talking about how they talk with their customers on not just their team on Slack, they're talking with their customers on Slack. It's interesting because it's like, it shows how, I mean, 5, 6 years ago, were we even using Slack yet? Maybe a
No,
couple. Some
Gmail
of
or, GChat, maybe
Yeah,
if
G
you were
chat,
integrated.
Hammer, and some of these things that were
Mhm.
connected to Salesforce. But it's just incredible to see how in like just a few short years, realistically, Slack has just interwoven itself into every company pretty much
Yeah.
on the planet.
I'm telling you, technology is advancing, and companies like Slack really found a need, to be able to bring consumers and their business partners, closely together. I don't know if I necessarily want my clients having my Slack, but
Yeah, right. Right.
with the amount of inbound that we have, and again, education that we need to do, it's probably easiest just to get on a call, a Zoom call or a meeting, to talk through things, which is,
Yep.
what we do.
It's funny. I still find even 13, 14 months into this whole wonderful pandemic of ours that I'll have some of those days where you'll get a phone, you'll be ready to log into a Zoom for your
Mhm.
meeting, and then your phone rings and you just kind of assume, okay, oh, maybe it's this person. So you pick it up. And it's still kind of, it's still fun for me on those phone call ones where some people are just like, dude, I've just had enough. I've just had enough Zoom for days. Is it cool if we just do a phone call? It's like, yes, this is totally fine. I'm fine with that. So,
I'm probably the opposite. I'm the one that uses FaceTime now on phone calls instead of
okay.
actually just calling somebody. It's FaceTime only for me. My friends and family are like, "What? I don't need to see you all day." I'm like, "Well, what's the point of that?" You know?
Everyone's got a FaceTime friend, Lisa, like that.
Oh, it's
Um,
me.
let's jump into the third six pillar of process. So,
Yeah.
as AdColony was growing and scaling, as your team was growing and expanding, can you spend a couple minutes talking about how you guys sort of thought about process and just documenting all the changes? Maybe it's playbooks, maybe it's SOPs, or standard operating procedures. Can you spend a couple minutes talking about how you and the team at AdColony thought about process?
Yeah. So, I mean, SOPs are our best friend, right? There's rules of engagement and teams that you need to reach out to, that are documented and everybody has access to. I think training is one of the biggest things, that needs to happen on a frequent basis, because things are changing so drastically, in the mobile ad tech industry. It's really important to have those trainings, and also be available for follow-ups, right? Q&A afterwards. Process is one of those things that I strive to always perfect. There's never, again, one right way of doing things. I think for AdColony, one of the greatest things that I found here as an organization, as a culture, is, we're very flexible. We're very, we don't go in with any egos into a process. We're always looking for ways to improve it. So whether it's a person on the engineering team or a person in finance, whoever it is has the ability to speak up and say, hey, this isn't working. Like, there's a better way to do this. And so really collaborating with every user internally helps build and create a process that is better than the one before. Right now we're going through an acquisition. Process changes are coming. I
Yep.
got an alert the other day that we're moving from Excel to Google Sheets, right?
Nice.
Something
Nice.
so simple. My team probably had a heart attack when I told them, but at the end, it's the same exact tool. It's just, a different process. And I think a lot of people, are stuck on process and not as flexible. But here at AdColony, everybody's kind of just going with it, right? Something as, simple as going from Excel to Google Sheets, it's going to require a new process, a new
Absolutely.
thought, a thought process change. So it's things like that. I think that, we have always been open to, and always have, always asked for change and always looked for, ways to improve. So I think, as we continue to grow, we have to be nimble, right? I think every business does. Not only are we changing, our clients' needs are changing.
Yep.
So being able to bend and flex with that, I think, is the key to success when it comes to process. Like I said before, SOPs are SOPs. We have our rules of engagement. So, I think just making sure that that's clear in the front, and in everybody's top of mind is the easiest way to get things for our clients as fast as possible. But yeah, so that's kind of, how we work through overall process and scaling and developing is just not having an ego and trying new things.
That's awesome. Have you found, Lisa, that like over, I think you were telling me the other day that you guys were already pretty comfortable with a remote work setting, but have you found the process to be any more difficult or more challenging in this remote setting to think about either process refinement or process additions, sometimes being able to have the times when you guys would meet up maybe in the Los Angeles office, or you'd meet up in a specific office and you'd be able to be together? Have you found it more difficult in this remote world to manage that, or have you guys found it to be easier? And just out of curiosity.
Yeah, I don't know if it's been necessarily easier. I will say that work has been more efficient. I feel
Mhm.
people have been more efficient, and things are more streamlined in terms of, the process of, this is the steps I take, and not being distracted by people around you. Being in an office setting, one of the things is, you can just reach over and say, hey, can you do this for me? Right.
Yeah, sure.
You can't do that
How do
anymore.
I do this? How
Yeah.
is it? Like, can you show me? Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember
you
that.
can't. It's making people more independent and more, independent in their own work, right?
I agree. It's
So
almost
I
raise the
feel like,
confidence.
yeah, and
Yeah.
empowering, right? Like my CSMs are empowered to do what they need to do, right? And I think that that's a huge critical aspect to developing a team is empowering the team,
Totally.
and having less distractions makes it more efficient. I find that when we were working in offices, we were working around the clock, right? Ad tech, internet never sleeps. At the beginning of COVID and working from home, there was definitely a blurred line of life and work, right? But I think after you get into the groove of, okay, I'm closing my laptop, work is done, and you're separating that, I feel like people have been more efficient in it. And the process has definitely, I feel like it's been more refined in the fact that people are following it better, as opposed to those ad hoc situations of sitting next to, another team and just having them ask you things and go around the process.
I think all super well said. It's funny. Humans are funny creatures. Sometimes when they're left to have to figure it out themselves, and then especially if they've got this thing called the internet sitting right in front of their face, they can literally find out anything. And
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's also just like your point about what we were all used to, 13, 14 months ago, where every one of us had our person or our friend or our buddy at
Mhm.
work that there was, if I have these three problems, I'm going to go to that person. If I have these
Yes.
three problems, and that's part of life, and that's part of working, that's part of being a team. That is a
Yeah,
team, right? You're helping each other
exactly.
out. But you're right, in this new setting, this new remote setting, sometimes they're not available. Maybe they're still a Slack stroke away or whatever. Like, but you don't have the ability to just stop what you're doing, go to a different pod, ask that friend for
Yes.
whatever it is, then come back. So you're like literally eliminating movement.
Right.
You're eliminating some of the wasted time that multiplied by two if you're going to slow one of your other teammates down and stop them from doing
Right.
his. So it's really interesting where like so many companies have seen these benefits or this almost like this refinement of teams being able to get more stuff done, and
Yeah.
oftentimes with less folks, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Lisa,
there's nothing that takes away from team dynamics and actual culture of being together. Nothing will be better than that. But I think that in terms of effectiveness and efficiencies and development, this actually has been a great test,
yeah,
and everybody's really succeeding here at AdColony, which is awesome.
last question on this. I'm just out of curiosity, and you don't have to tell us if you want to. Does AdColony have they kind of made up their mind in terms of, are they going to be blended once we're able to go back? Are they going to be super happy remaining remote, or is everybody going back to the office? I've been asking people this lately just to get a sense for sort of
Yeah.
what companies are thinking about. What are you guys thinking about?
I think it's a blended in the future, and I think that's a good thing. One of our biggest things at AdColony is, and especially on the customer success thing, is getting in base with our clients, right? That's the ultimate goal. I don't think that's going to happen for a while. Agency partners are not going back until 2022 at this point. So getting in-person meetings is something that, we probably won't be able to do for a while. Now, team collaboration is great. I mean, I would love to get together with my team and brainstorm ideas. I think, again, with this acquisition that we're going through with Digital Turbine, acquiring us recently, there's going to be a lot of process changes and a lot of collaboration that we're going to need to do together. So those are times that I think, being in the office, being able to whiteboard out, the look of the future is going to be really critical, and being together and being able to brainstorm and come up with ideas together of how it looks. But I think in terms of the day-to-day, like I said, everybody's been really effective and efficient, and the company has grown significantly during COVID, that I don't think it's necessary for us day-to-day to be there just to do our work. It's more of that collaboration type of environment that I think, we're all knowing we're going to have to be back together for.
Yep.
So I think
Yep.
it's a 50-50. I mean, we've been, going with, regulations in each city too. We're a global company. What's happening here in LA is completely different than New York City, which is completely different than Istanbul or, London. So I think as a whole global company, we're very cognizant of the needs of the regions, and the environment that's going on in those current ones. So it's not going to be, everybody's back, 3 days a week, anytime soon, but more of a flexible type of thing.
I love it. That's great. That's great.
Yeah. It's interesting to hear that, companies are going, full blown remote style. I think that I remember Yahoo years ago said that that's what they were going to do. And, just seeing how that company, has gone since then, it's definitely interesting. I think there's definitely things that we can do, like I said, from home, but things that have to be done in person.
Totally agree with you. I think the client part in person is almost critical, especially if you're talking about a partnership-based relationship where like you really are trying to figure out whether or not you're going to date and eventually propose and eventually get married to somebody. It's like that. You got to do it in person. And then I think that there's certain critical team activities that you just got to do in person. Like there's the whole, I mean, just think about how much fun we all used to have on offsite days. Like, for example, like you get excited for those days. Number one, because you didn't have to go to the office. That's just calling out what everybody's thinking. But number two, because like everyone was allowed to kind of pump the brakes on their day to day, because the point of the offsite was to use your brain to just think about with your team all this cool, collaborative, creative stuff. I think now we're going to probably go back to where like the power of the onsite might be. Those might be the days that you got to go to the
office days.
You be with your team, figuring stuff out. I think some of the companies I've been talking to lately that are doing like when they're planning some of their rebound onsites, some of these are still a few months down the road. Like even for the fastest company, that could still post summer essentially is what I'm hearing from some of these business leaders. But like, here's another thought for our listeners. Some companies are already thinking about how they can, when they do have these onsites, they'll bring customer and team in at the same time. So then that's going to be how you can kind of like maximize in-person time so that you're really being able to get some of your time for the day with the team, some of your time with the team and the customers, just to make up for this miss that we've had. So there's a lot of cool things that are going on with there. Lisa, I want to chat with you about the fourth and final CX pillar, feedback. I was excited about this one because in ad tech, I've got a bunch of different ideas for how you guys are doing it, but can you spend some time talking about how you actually collect customer feedback and employee feedback at AdColony today?
Yeah, so we do, let's start with AdColony. We do a ton of, surveys, both from engagement surveys to also task surveys, right? Like how much time are you spending on certain aspects of your day? Whether it be the proposal phase and putting together the decks and the media plans for our brand advertisers, or is it on campaign setup, working with operations, working with creative services? So really gauging where people are spending their time and seeing if we do process changes, how that affects the time spent, I think is really critical. I think for AdColony, we put a lot of investment in the power of our people. So, constant surveys going out, especially over the last 13 months, really trying to understand our employees and how they're feeling, right? How are they feeling about working from home? How are they feeling about coming back to the office? How are they feeling about connection with each other? So that's been a big priority for AdColony over the last 13 months. On the client side, let's just be honest. I mean, when things aren't going right. That's like in ad tech, if things are wrong, about it. All the fire drills are going off, fire alarms everywhere. I think our sales team does an amazing job of connecting with our customers and finding out on every single RFP that we're submitting, what maybe wasn't a fit for their strategy, right? Clients, again, I had said before, we're very consultative and strategic in how we approach their needs. So really understanding that, after we submit, a request for proposal. I think that's our sales team does a really solid job of giving me that information so that we can course correct in the future, whether it be our creative capabilities just weren't what they needed to be. Maybe sometimes our creative capabilities are too much for them and they don't have enough time to, build in their timeline before launch, that, they have this custom execution that they have to build out or work with us on. I don't know if I said this already, but rates, it's a competitive landscape. What we could be selling for a certain price, somebody else could be selling for a different price. So getting that feedback loop so that I understand and our strategy team understands what the landscape is for our advertisers and brands working across different publishers and different networks. So I think that's really, how we've been at AdColony, really engaging with our customers to get the feedback. I've worked at companies that have really focused on NPS, right? I had a company where they spent so much time on NPS, hours a week on, contacting customers. And I thought it was amazing. I, have had thoughts about bringing that to AdColony, and I think with the acquisition, that might be an opportunity that we can do that, because there is going to be change that's happening. Our offerings are going to change. So what do our clients want to see? How is that going to work for them in the future? So it's definitely a tool that I have used in the past, that I do see success with, that I am already thinking about how that's going to look if we were to introduce it once the acquisition and the team grows and our offerings become larger and our product set.
I love that, Lisa. A bunch of great points there. One thought that you're making me think about right now is excellent point on, for our listeners, when your business comes up to like a pivotal moment, whether it's an acquisition, whether it's a merger, maybe it could even be as simple as you just had a massive growth spurt and you just brought on a bunch of badges that you never thought you'd ever have, and that's a pivotal moment. But going back to then your NPS points, and here's the thing, I always try to be agnostic on this, whether it's NPS, whether it's CSAT, whether it's customer effort scores, whether it's product scores, like whatever you want to do, you are spot on, Lisa, where the faster you can start to figure out some basic cadence or some basic rhythm and then some basic count. I don't care which one of those variables. Right. I know for me, I've had a lot of great success with NPS as well. I know there's a lot of CX'ers out there that say, well, it doesn't really help you. But the point is it gives, there's a medium for feedback. Then and then with how easy most of these tools are these days, somebody on Lisa's team, when customer XYZ says something, whether it's good or bad, someone on Lisa's team can see that, probably in Salesforce. So now they know a customer just gave me feedback. If it's great, boom, opportunity to call them up, tell them how much you love them, say thank you, tell them, you love everything about why they said what they said and that you're here if they need anything else changed. And then when it's the detractors and something went really, really bad,
Right.
same thing. Give you an opportunity. Maybe it's not even the rep. Maybe it's Lisa calling on that one. Maybe
Yeah.
it's Lisa calling saying, hey, I just saw this thing and I want to talk.
Walk
Let's
me
figure
through
out
it.
what 100%. And it's like, so from that regard, nothing could be better than that. And people that want to argue around how there's not enough value or there's not a high enough ROI or there is, that's ridiculous, because I think at least we've both probably seen a bunch of times in our career working in like the client side where when you could take a detractor on survey one, and then because of what they told you and because of what you did to remediate, solve, make it better, make it right, the next time you get a feedback score from that same customer, it's a 10 and it's a promoter, like a flaming promoter.
What
That's
an amazing
one of the
thing.
biggest wins in the world, right there.
Win, fast money, right?
100%.
I've had those conversations where it's been, they've had a bad experience and I've called them up and I've said, hey, talk me through this, right? I think postmortems are great for process, looking back on a process that didn't really work well internally, but you should do that with your clients, right? It shouldn't just be an internal type of conversation that you have. You should be able to say, hey, client, what do you feel we missed on? And what can we do moving forward to reassure you and to make sure that loop is closed? And I think that conversation, especially on the client side, having been on the client side, is so amazing to know that one of my partners cared enough to call me and reach out and try and make things right. And, you can throw added value, and free media at somebody all day long, but if it doesn't actually correct the core of what the issue was, it's not going to be fixable long term.
Yep, 100%. Lisa, this has been an absolute pleasure. Before we wrap up today's show, where can people find out more about you and where can people find out more about AdColony?
Yeah, so you can definitely find out about AdColony on our site, adcolony.com. You can find out more about me on my LinkedIn, Lisa VanderGast. I have a very wide net of people in the CX world. So if anybody's looking to connect in the ad tech industry, please reach out. I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Lisa, thanks so much for coming on the CX Chronicles podcast.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Have a great one.
Have a great day.